The first soldier broke protocol before the chorus even ended. He was standing at attention, full dress uniform, rifle at his side, trained never to show emotion, never to move, never to let anyone see weakness. But when the young Filipino woman hit the high note of Pasko Na Naman, his shoulders began to shake. And by the time she reached the final verse, 37 Russian soldiers, men who had survived war, men who had buried brothers, men who were taught that tears were betrayal, were openly weeping in formation. But to understand how this impossible moment happened, how a song about Christmas in a tropical country made battle-hardened men break down in the middle of a Moscow winter, we need to go back to the beginning, back to the girl who thought she was just singing for her supper. Her name was Maria Santos, 26 years old, a domestic worker in Moscow, and the last person you would expect to bring a military base to its knees. Maria grew up in Samar, where Christmas carols weren't about joy. They were about survival. As a kid, she sang Ang Pasko ay Sumapit, door to door for coins that would buy rice for her siblings. Anak, take care of that voice, women would tell her. Not everyone is given a gift like that. But her father didn't believe them. You won't feed a family with songs. What will you eat? High notes? So Maria learned to stay quiet. She hid her voice like it was something shameful. At 22, she left the Philippines. At 24, she became a domestic worker in Moscow. At 26, she was invisible, cleaning apartments, washing clothes, cooking meals for families who barely looked at her. She stopped singing completely, except for one night. December 15th, Maria was cleaning the home of Colonel Dmitry Volkov, a high-ranking officer in the Russian army. She thought she was alone. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the heater and the distant howl of the Moscow wind. She was folding laundry when she noticed a small Christmas tree in the corner, crooked, undecorated, like someone had set it up out of obligation, not love. It reminded her of home, of her mother, of her siblings, of Christmas mornings when they had nothing but each other. The loneliness was too heavy, the silence too thick. Her heart felt like it might crack, so she whispered, softly, barely audible, Pasko Na Naman, okay tulen ng araw. Her voice floated through the empty apartment, gentle at first, then fuller, warmer, carrying every ounce of homesickness she had buried for 4 years. And just as she reached the line, Tukso man ay marami, she heard something, a cough. Colonel Volkov stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, his face unreadable. Izvinite, Maria stammered. Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to. He raised a hand. Sing it again. Maria's heart pounded. Sir? Again, please. So she did. And Colonel Dmitry Volkov, a man who had commanded troops, a man who had buried soldiers, a man who never cried, stood in his own living room and wept. The next morning, Maria expected to be fired. Instead, the colonel called her into his study. In 3 days, my regiment hosts our annual Christmas gathering. We honor fallen soldiers. Their families come. He paused. This year, I want you to sing. Maria laughed nervously. Sir, I'm just a helper. I don't perform. Yesterday, when you sang, I saw my mother's face. Volkov interrupted. She died when I was 7. Christmas, 1987. I have not cried for her in 40 years. But your song, it opened something. He leaned forward. My men have seen terrible things. They do not smile anymore. They do not hope anymore. I need them to remember why they are human. His voice cracked. And I think your voice can do that. Maria wanted to refuse. She wasn't a performer. She didn't have training. But something in the colonel's eyes stopped her. It wasn't an order. It was a plea. Sige po, she whispered. I will try. December 19th. The military hall was massive. Cold concrete, high ceilings, Russian flags on every wall. 37 soldiers sat in formation, some young, some scarred, all of them rigid, disciplined, trained to show nothing. Their families sat behind them, wives, children, elderly parents bundled in winter coats. Maria stood at the front in her simple dress, hands trembling. She had never felt more out of place. Colonel Volkov nodded to her, and she began. Pasko Na Naman. Her voice was soft at first, hesitant, but the hall made every note echo. It filled the cold space with something warm, something alive. Then came the second verse. A young soldier in the front row, no older than 22, began to cry. Not quietly, openly, shamelessly. Then another, then another. By the third verse, the entire formation was breaking. Shoulders shaking, faces wet, grown men sobbing like children. But it wasn't just the soldiers. The wives were crying. The children were crying. Even the elderly babushkas in the back, women who had survived Stalin, who had buried husbands in Siberia, they wept. Maria didn't understand why. She just kept singing, higher, stronger, until the final line escaped her lips like a prayer. At sumanyo ang ligaya ng Pasko. Silence. Then the soldiers rose, not clapping, not saluting, crying, openly, loudly, without shame. Maria stood frozen, tears streaming down her own face. Colonel Volkov approached her, trembling. Do you know what you did? Maria shook her head. That song was written in 1966, but in 1987, a Filipino nurse sang that exact song to my unit in Afghanistan. Maria's breath caught. We were trapped, wounded, dying. She was with a Red Cross team. She had no weapons, no protection, just her voice. He wiped his eyes. She sang to us for 3 hours while we waited for evacuation. Half of us were crying. The other half were unconscious. But we all heard her. I never learned her name, but I never forgot her voice. He looked at Maria. Tonight, when you sang, I heard her again. And so did every man in this room who was there that night. Maria couldn't speak. You did not just sing a song. You brought back the memory of the woman who made us believe we would survive. The video was recorded by a soldier's daughter. She posted it online with a simple caption, Filipino song makes Russian soldiers cry. Within 24 hours, it had 5 million views. Within a week, 50 million. News outlets from Manila to Moscow covered the story. But Maria didn't care about fame. She cared that 37 soldiers, men who thought they had forgotten how to feel, remembered they were still human. She cared that a song from her childhood, a song she thought didn't matter, had reached across continents and decades to heal wounds no one could see. Maria Santos is still in Moscow. She's no longer a domestic worker. She's now a singing teacher for military families, helping children of soldiers find their voices. And every Christmas, she returns to that same military hall. She stands in the same spot, and she sings Pasko Na Naman. And every year, without fail, the soldiers cry. Not because the song is sad, but because it reminds them of the only thing war can never destroy, the part of them that is still worth saving.